Hi, I'm Bill Doherty, and I want to welcome the viewers to another edition of Bill's Bullpen. Bill's Bullpen is a program that's intended to give people some thoughts about what goes on, both in our local community and in the region as a whole. And I'm very pleased to say I have with me today James Gardiner. And James, tell us what your title is.
Sure. So, Bill, thank you, first of all, the opportunity to be here. I go by Jay, right?
Okay.
The community will know me as Jay Gardiner, and I am the health director for public health and the environment for Barnstable County.
How did you ever get to be that?
Right. Well, it wasn't a linear path. It's like many of us, we have a crooked path.
Oh, you have a feminine side.
No, no. It was. I have had a number of different positions, all within the discipline of public health.
Okay.
So out of college,
And where did you go to school?
So I went to Providence College.
Oh.
I thought I was going to be
a friar.
I was a friar, exactly right. And I thought my career was going to be in hospital administration, and it didn't take it that way. I went into public health. I grew up in the city of Worcester, so most of my career was off Cape, and I'll talk a little bit about that intersection. But I came up with progressive responsibility. Came up through public health. I ran different programs. I entered as an inspector, entry level. Food division, water quality, lead poisoning prevention, emergency preparedness, and like I say, with progressive responsibility, I became the director of public health in Worcester.
Really?
And after a short time, I then was asked to bring a department together and it's called Health and Human Services. That brought together 9 different reports. So that was health and code, the senior center, the library, human rights, disabilities, and veterans. Anything that was as far as the quality of life, enhancing the quality of life for individuals. And I did that for some time, and it was very rewarding, and I enjoyed that. But I'd become a commissioner, and I'd been there some time, and I then was provided some opportunities. And I moved over to some other things. You and I just talked earlier. I became the executive director for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. They're based in Chicago. And you know, Bill, I have to tell you, still within the discipline of public health, like neuromuscular diseases, things of that nature. Ice Bucket Challenge was going on at that time. And one of the things I wanted was pledge fundraising and learning, you know, when you're in government, it's very narrow. You have tax levy dollars and then it's grants, things of that nature. But I was looking for innovative dollars. How do you do that? How do you handle that and manage that piece? So that was wonderful. As you're old enough to remember, there was a time when Muscular Dystrophy Association, we owned Labor Day, right? The Jerry Lewis, the telethon.
One of your predecessors, George Hoyfelter, had a very happy habit of bringing in thoughts and ideas that would make money for the county. Okay, and it had to do with his identifying different types of equipment that could be very positively used, and let's say, and not only let's say improve the quality of life, but also bring in more dough.
Yeah, well, you're always looking for resources, and there's no shortage of initiatives in public health, right? It's limited by many times your imagination and the resources that you have. There are many things within public health that we just don't have the resources to get to. But we'll talk about some of these, and I shamefully brought...
And by the way, as a disclaimer, I have been the chair of a Board of Health in this town. So, yeah.
So you understand.
I got an exposure to the breadth.
The many challenges that happened, right. So after muscular dystrophy, and I gave them a commitment of a couple years, I did a little longer than that. I then went on to lead the optometry in Massachusetts, executive director for optometry, vision, and eye care.
Really?
And that was something that, you know, when I was in public health, it was primary health, mental health, oral health. I never thought of vision care. And we worked in that for some time. And I then came down to the Cape. My wife and I were married in Chatham 30 years ago. And so we have affinity for the Cape. And we came to the Cape several years ago.
At the bars
we did at Wauquasit.
Oh, cool.
We had a reception at Wauquasit.
That's in Harwich, by the way.
It is in Harwich. It's just over the line.
I mean, I lived in Harwich for 30 years.
So you know. Yeah, exactly. Right. So, Bill, I came down to the Cape, and innocently enough, true story, I was doing recycling at Yarmouth, and recycling, I saw the electronic board that said Yarmouth is hiring. And I looked it up, and they needed, actually at the time, I was assistant director of public health, and I then became the director of public health. So, but that short stint in Yarmouth as the director of public health gave me an understanding of the challenges, the unique challenges for a Cape community, right? Public health is widely misunderstood, tragically under-resourced, And the challenge, and you know it as a chairman of a board of health.
Absolutely.
I didn't have the breadth of Title V, and we had some in Worcester, but not nearly to the degree that you have here. And the significant challenges that you have in staffing, in housing, things of that nature. Some were analogous, but some were unique here. And then after only several years in Yarmouth, I was approached there was an opening at Barnstable County, and I came in and had some conversations, and really what enticed me, Bill, was they're looking to do, the commissioners, the assembly, they're looking to do some strategic planning. They want to move forward with some strategic planning for alignment. Are we hitting the mark? What's in our top drawer? What are the things that we want to be doing? And more than anything, and I bring it here today, is the county has so many services that either they're not recognized, perhaps underappreciated. The county has such a strong portfolio and catalog of programs that as a health director in a community that you serve, I didn't even understand. And it's really opened my eyes to what there is. So I've only been with the county for about 2 months, a little over 2 months. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, Bill, I actually thought my strength was going to be to get out into the communities almost immediately, because I know public health fairly well. I've been at it for some time. I know I know how that works. And I said, I haven't been out there yet. I meet with them, but I'm still learning the internal services that we have, so that when I do go to the communities, I'm able to talk about each of the resources, because there are unique needs. Out on the Cape, and the Lower Cape is a little different than, different.
They tell you that all the time.
Yeah.
Because I remember doing that and getting this business about, because I used to do dog and pony shows all over the Cape.
Right.
Because as you rightly see, it's very important that you communicate exactly what the parts of and departments within the county contribute to the quality of life here in Barnstable County.
Right.
And you should and you must know what those are as you go out.
Well, and Bill, and you know this, it's about relationships. You have to be out speaking to them. Virtual is terrific, and we do a lot of calls, but I want to get out and do this with people, with boards of health, with select boards, and certainly our county administrator, Michael Dutton, he's very skilled at that, about building relationships, both internal and then the external messaging, and cooperation, and getting participation and thoughtful deliberation as to how do we best serve. And really, what we're doing is supporting the 15 communities. They have their own boards of health. They have their own select boards.
That's such an important point.
Yeah.
And you can't emphasize it enough, because the thing that I ran into was a fear that the county, in coming in and describing and identifying the services that we're offering, was presenting a pathway of taking over what they were doing in the community. Now, that doesn't say that we aren't prepared, or we weren't prepared to help out, but it was always what I would call based upon an invitation, not based upon a fiat of going in and doing those things.
We do not, Bill, spot on, we do not want to force us way into the room, but the fact of the matter is, many different initiatives, the smaller communities can quickly become overwhelmed, and they just don't have, it's not giving you a government answer, it's just they don't have the resources. 1.5 FTEs for a health department is not enough to handle all of the from housing and complaints, food. The Cape swells. I'll tell you, Yarmouth swells from 25,000 to 60,000. All the issues that come in, and it's difficult to keep pace. Well, the county comes in and helps in that regard. Here's a great example. Next month, or the end of this month actually, we're going to bring on about 14 beach samplers that'll be coming in. Our summer staff will be coming in, and they sample. It's really, quite frankly, it's underappreciated, and it's not even, well, I'm going to try to put that out so that it's understood in all the communities that what a resource that is. We're a hospitality, we're a tourist destination, and the county makes sure thousands of samples are done each week to make sure that the water quality, whether it's in beach community, whether it's in beaches or fresh water, that it's safe, recreational, it is safe. We also have summer sanitarians they're going to help and support, whether it's in retail or food service, things of that nature. Here's what's interesting, what I didn't know. A lot of these summer help have transitioned on. A lot of the staff that is at the county started out as summer staff. So this cohort of beach samplers that are coming in, they might be in fact the next generation of county employees. That's exciting to me. I think that's
okay.
wonderful.
Well, sadly, the AmeriCorps offered that same transition into the administration.
Right.
With it, because they got established here because it was housing.
Right.
And then they were able to transition into different organizations on the Cape. I know that people at some of the NGOs like HAC.
Yep.
Have people that were AmeriCorps. I know the Cape Light Compact, of which I'm still involved with.
Okay.
Has their deputy started off as an AmeriCorps volunteer.
Yep.
And unfortunately, there has been some, how shall I say, examination of roles, and perhaps there's a great deal of misunderstanding at the federal level about the value of the contribution that's been made by a lot of these things.
For sure. And there's in public health, it's not enough to do a good job. You have to let the community decision makers know the work, because a lot of the services that are provided, quite frankly, Bill, they're invisible, right? The food inspections, the beach sampling, the complaint investigations, the emergency preparedness work that goes on. It's under the radar, it's not visible, and there's so many subjects that go on. The attention span right now and the news cycle is about 20 minutes. You have to grab those, let people know. You have to advocate, because the county has, and I brought the professional banner, we're really trying to fly the flag of making sure that the community, decision makers understand, and the general public understand, we're a resource. I would really, the listeners and yourself, to go onto our website. We have, you and I had a conversation as we were scheduling this. You're talking about ticks and things. We have an epidemiologist here for the county.
I'm glad to hear that he's back.
Very skilled. We have an epidemiologist. That's Leah Hamner, but we have hired the tick. That's with the extension. Not within my department, but the extension, and they're doing. There was a Zoom call last night from out in Amherst. Dr. Rich put something on to talk about the different types of ticks, the concern that is. You and I talked about it, whether it's a deer tick, Lone Star, dog tick, to educate people, because that is seriously a concern. That is
and by the way,
viable concern.
Ticks are a year-round concern. I remember putting out Christmas lights years ago, and then coming back in being covered with ticks because it was a warm day,
right?
And they suddenly reappeared.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a really wide kind of portfolio, but we want to make sure that we're not just a menu of services. We want to be responsive to the community. And many times, we're educating people we're immunizing them with good information, right? We're giving them good information, immunizing them so that they can make a good decision. By way of example, the MMR, the measles vaccines that are going on. You've heard about this in West Texas, the measles concern, vaccinations, things of that nature. Wendy, when she was here, she spoke about that concern. Fortunately, Massachusetts, we don't have any cases of measles, but to be quite frankly, we're probably a plane ride away from that. How do we protect ourselves? It's with immunization. So we've had several across the Cape. Next one is the end of this month. It's going to be in Dennis, at the Dennis the CAL, they call it, Center for Active Living. We've had one in Orleans already. We've been out in Provincetown. There'll be another one in Mashpee. Not to force, these aren't forced. This isn't COVID vaccinations. This is to educate individuals. If you go on our website, there's a chart to say, are you properly protected? Are your loved ones properly protected? And here's a vaccination for you. So there's a whole host of information, and by no means are we forcing ourselves, but we want to make sure that we're providing information and education, not only for your health, but also the health of the environment.
Well, some of the other things that you haven't talked about have to do with what I would call emergency preparedness. And I think that's a very misunderstood, or let's say little understood, role that the county has.
Understood and underappreciated, because what happens, is when things are difficult, you have to train those things. We have volunteers, but Chip Riley, who oversees that, and actually my predecessor, Sean O'Brien, was really, I think he was the one that actually brought this to a different level and organized that.
Yes, he did.
And I hope so someday I'll get a chance to, if he's watching, I hope I get a chance to meet him one day and he'd come back and introduce himself. Mm-hmm. But that service is tremendously underappreciated and misunderstood. It's a beehive, but there's trainings that go on. We're up on the old jail site there, 2 conference rooms, and almost daily there are trainings going on with firefighters, with volunteers, EMS, not only at our campus and facility, but across the Cape, mm-hmm. for communication, understanding, to say how equipment, what is available. We want to make sure. It could be as benign as the Yarmouth St. Patrick's Day Parade. Well, we coordinate, the county coordinates what the response would be. How would we, should there be a problem? What would that look like? The county coordinates all of those things. Very much under the radar, big events on the Cape. Our emergency preparedness program is under the radar, coordinating with the services should there be a problem.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, well, let's see. The mission of the county was, as I recall during the time I was active on it, was that we're trying to improve the quality of life for all the citizens in Barnstable County.
It's quality of life. That's exactly right.
Let's see. So, healthy community through regional and collaborative inspection training and disease prevention and investigation, wellness, safety. Okay, essentially, that's the path to supporting and improving the quality of life.
That's our mission, right? That's our mission.
And what's your vision then? We see the mission, but what is your vision?
So what we want to do is to strengthen. One, we want to make sure that all the services that we have, that the community understands what they are, and that we're a resource for them. Mm-hmm. So we don't necessarily have to have the staff that is going to help with whether it's homelessness or food insecurity, but we're a bridge to those resources. We want people to make sure they don't have to be within our table of organization, but we have a network, a labyrinth of services, whether it's a faith-based organization, a cultural organization, that we can direct people to and get them. We'll never have all of the resources, and quite frankly, some of it comes about dollars, but to making sure that what are the needs in the community and how do we best, whether we direct provider to those or we're able to coordinate and be, like I say, a bridge to resources. I actually think one of the challenges that we have, Billy, and I'm sure you face, is it's the county. It's not recognized that all the services that are there. Well, next year is going to be 100 years, right? 1926 this started. So yeah.
And there's actually there was a historian. I don't know if he's still alive, but there was a historian that basically put that book together as to how the county, the county government evolved.
Yep.
Barnstable County is named #1, and it's listed as #1 in Massachusetts.
Yep.
And the importance of that, is something that should be appreciated, because in other parts of the country, regional government started first, and then cities and towns were sort of plugged in to the region. In Massachusetts, we started off with individual towns, and we became a commonwealth, and within that commonwealth, we became counties that incorporated the communities that were inside that region. Mm-hmm. And in Massachusetts, everything is contiguous, whereas in other parts of the world, you have what I'd call unincorporated space. My son lives in Peachtree Corners, which at one point was unincorporated space next to Duluth, Georgia, right. And and they incorporated to become their own town.
Sure.
But there's still, if you go across the country, you still find areas that are unincorporated.
Sure. And it's interesting. In certain parts of the country, especially down south, I've had some consulting work down in Kentucky. County government is well understood. Public health is typically and maybe based in a hospital, and it's wide, wide, expansive geofence footprints of services. Down here, it's not that. So county government is somewhat of an enigma here. It's not widely understood what county government is. What role do they play? What does that look like? And that's some of our challenge to be able to say.
Let's go down and,
sure.
and just so public health nursing.
So
I've seen your folks out at different, let's say different trade fairs and so forth.
So we do screenings. We're at health fairs. You've probably been. We're across the Cape on that. Our calendar of events is up on our website. Right now, they're doing the measles. Like I say, the measles MMR. They do screenings for school for children, things of that. Twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. We have immunization clinics right at the county. We're right behind the courthouse.
Now, do you need an appointment for
registry.
that?
You do want to schedule that because we just want to make sure that, in fact, what you're coming in for, our hope is that you don't have to do a second visit where you have to come back. So we want to get some information. You do schedule that. It's right on our website. You would schedule that. Sometimes it's a travel clinic, things that they need, school. It might be something for employment that they have to get to. But we have translation capabilities, things of that nature. So
really?
Come in, yeah.
Now,
so,
which languages do you translate?
So really, what the biggest is Spanish, Portuguese, Haitian Creole. Those are the tough. And sometimes we have to use technology, right? Google Translate and things of that nature. But we're getting better at that as well. But that's important because that's, again, being responsive to what the needs are. We want to make sure we can communicate in the right way and then provide the services in an efficient manner. So that's important.
Okay, what about the emergency planning? What exactly does that entail at this time?
Sure. So we're coming up to hurricane season, right? So we're
natural disasters.
Natural disasters that come in. There's constant training with our volunteers, our Medical Reserve Corps, and also amongst the communities. We mentioned earlier before we came on the air talking about police and fire, making sure what is the role? Should there be an event? We're the convener in this. We have a whole outfit of communication right at Barnstable County, but sometimes we're going to be mobile. And we have technology, we have electronic, we have equipment, we have radio technology to help in a supportive role. We're not come in to take over at a certain community, but we're going to help.
Well,
we're going to help.
And one of the helps that I remember we instituted, back when that was starting, was that we came up with interoperability radios so that we could both support Plymouth County and Plymouth County could support us, because there was a lot of what I'd call need, of that.
Sure.
And we found out at the time that that in order to communicate with Plymouth County, we had to go through a site that was in Worcester, and then it would then be retransmitted by the state police down. So one of the things that I learned in the military was interoperability incorporates everything. And I think that one of the pieces of emergency planning which people perhaps don't appreciate is not just the police and fire, but it's also the health community that is part of that.
We've learned that a number of different ways after 9/11, if you remember anthrax, and that's not something you can put yellow tape around, right? So some of the COVID was the most recent. So certainly public health is at the table in this infectious disease, things of that nature. So we're learning that. It didn't happen right away, but public health plays a significant role in this.
Now, environmental health is something that I think is let's say, not really understood. We've been involved with climate change issues and things of that sort, but it's not just climate change. It's what are some of the things that, let's say, the rabies awareness. Oh, God, I remember when we were supporting the dumping of meat infested, or let's say inserted with with treatment, and then we didn't have any rabies. State pulled back the money, which was being coordinated by Barnstable County, and then within 2 months there was rabies found in Provincetown. So this environmental health is something that that people should be aware of.
So that meeting went on just last week. It's not an easy project. We have some young they're called contact tracers. They were out in their in their suits and they were doing exactly that. They were throwing medication out, to making sure to keeping. There are no rabies right now on the Cape. It is controlled, but it's because there's a prevention.
Exactly.
There's a prevention component. We need to be upstream of this, right? Protecting that. The hoarding test has.
Oh God, I remember when we hired that woman on the hoarding, and I remember talking to her. And after I talked to her, I went home and I found a bag of let's say of shirts in the closet, and there were 50 shirts in there that I hadn't worn for years. And when I threw brought those shirts over to the Goodwill, behind that was another bag of stuff. So yeah, that hoarding thing is.
Well, Bill, there's no easy answer on that.
No.
So Bill, there's pathology to that. Typically, I mean, this isn't just clutter. These are individuals who they've endured some trauma in their life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Their house is down to very narrow passages. They won't get rid of a broken teacup and things. It's difficult. Their life has come down. Their car, things of that nature. This isn't just, well, you bring a dumpster and let's empty out the house and the garage or what have you. No, there's this counseling that has to happen. That's a very difficult, complex, deep, complex psychological issue. But we want to address it, and it's very pertinent.
We've already talked a little bit about the water quality analysis that the county provides for beach evaluation, and of course wastewater management is something that the county had provided a template to the town. Some towns that adopted the template and started with their planning and Yarmouth was one of them, and I believe
Just
that
passed it, yeah.
and Falmouth, is another that you had adapted it.
It's incrementally. It has started. Yarmouth is on the front edge of that. Only because that's a program that a community that I worked in, but that's making its way.
Okay, and then finally, shared services.
So let me explain what that is. So when I was up in Worcester, because public health, it doesn't have the infrastructure. It's suboptimally, staffed. So it makes sense to have mutual agreements to work with other. When I was in Worcester, we reached across Lake Quinsigamond to partner with Shrewsbury. And then it was 6 other communities. This was before there was any shared, so it was even a thought at the Department of Public Health. Well, here we have shared services. All the 15 communities come together. And what we want to do is to be able to share, whether it's training, technology, bringing people together, being able to strengthen and support one another, whether it's in inspections, if they soil evaluators, Title V review for engineering plans. We're stronger together. So the 15
Absolutely.
communities come together in that, and they meet on a regular basis. We have some support, thankfully, from the state, and it's also called what's called a training hub. And if some individuals, because there's quite a turnover in public health, and down here it's difficult. In Worcester, when I would be hiring, I would get 10, 15 applications for a job, and down here, the hiring, the labor pools is quite different, and it's difficult to find professionals that
especially
that fit
since our housing problem.
and that's the limiting factor on that. Yeah, no question.
Okay, so now we've come to the end of this. What is the takeaway you would want to have people have?
Yeah, Bill, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Welcome, yeah.
And what I would ask is, what we're going to work hard on is making sure that our services are out into the public, people understand that, and that they understand the county is here to serve their needs. We don't just have a portfolio or menu of services asking them to choose one. We want to know what that is, and we're out on a regular basis, whether at nursing program, our shared services, we have educators. We talked about our beach samplers. They're going to be ambassadors for the county, and we want to hear from them. What are the services? What is the unmet needs? Because 25% of our health is primary care and access to a hospital and access to emergency room. It's the other pieces, your housing, your transportation, your food supply. Those are the things, education, schools.
And as you probably, since you went to a Catholic college as I did,
Yep.
you probably learned that we're not here for just ourselves, we're here for others. And holistically, everything impinges upon everything else, and it all goes together.
Bill, thank you. We're connected. And one of the things, May is Mental Health Month, right? So we want to make sure, we are connected. Make sure what happens to one of us happens to all of us. We want to be together in this.
Exactly. And
I have to ask, what school did you go to?
Jay, I want to thank you for coming, and I want to thank the viewers, because I certainly learned a lot, and I'm delighted to see that the attitude at the county has not changed from the time that I was serving at the county. Thank you very much for that. And I want to encourage the viewers to go to that webpage, go to the website for Barnstable County, and find out for yourself all of the things that are available. All you have to do is ask. So do that, and I want to thank the viewers for watching. This has been another edition of Born TV.